Stay tuned for urban legends to ghostly tales of the paranormal, because now it's time for
Message on the Wall.
Welcome to another journey through haunted cemeteries, with Message on the Wall bringing you haunted cemeteries in Philadelphia in the state of Pennsylvania. Philadelphia is rife with spirits, with the very haunted Eastern State Penitentiary, Independence Inn, Pennsylvania Hospital, the Betsy Ross House, and even the zoo, and the list goes on. But as far as haunted cemeteries go, we begin with the Christchurch burial ground on Arch Street. Dedicated in 1719, among the thousands interred at the site is Philadelphia's most famous citizen, Benjamin Franklin. Because Franklin once said a penny earned is a penny saved, it became a custom to throw coins on his grave, especially brides on their way to the church to be married. All in all, the gravestones read like an who's who of historical figures that include those who shaped America, from congressmen to city mayors and heroic soldiers. The cemetery, surrounded by a wall, is partially fenced off in one area, as the bricks were removed so that people can view the grave of Benjamin Franklin without having to go into the graveyard itself. Some visitors have experienced the coins they have thrown on the grave being thrown back at them. Franklin's fenced-off area can be found at the corner of Arch Street and North Independence Mall East. There are group tours of the cemetery during daylight hours, for which there is a charge. Moving on, we take a trip to St. Peter's Church Cemetery on Pine Street. The church, built in 1761, has seen some major renovations over the last couple of years. The walled-in cemetery beside the church has some notable residents, such as Colonel John Nixon, who was the first person to give a public reading of the Declaration of Independence, Charles Willson Peale, who was the first to paint a portrait of George Washington, can be found here, the Vice President to James Polk, George Mifflin Dallas, is also interred in the graveyard since his death in 1864. There are tales that the well-trimmed lawn in the tree-lined graveyard is, on occasion, the sighting of a phantom horse and carriage that charges at full speed across the lawn. When 7 Indian chiefs visited Philadelphia in 1793, they never left. Dying from smallpox, the chiefs were buried at St. Paul's, where it is now said they haunt. And taking a short walk along Pine Street, on the opposite side of the road, is Old Pine Street Church and Cemetery. The church was built in 1768, with the cemetery having been dedicated a little earlier in 1764. When British troops occupied the church, taking it over for 1 year in 1777, it was used as a hospital as well as a place to stable the horses, which gave rise to stories that those who desecrated the church and graveyard returned to haunt the place as a punishment. There are regular paranormal investigations that take place, as well as ghost walks that take in the site. Taking a northerly direction, we head for East Palmer Street and the Palmer Burial Ground. A mesh fence surrounds the cemetery that is enclosed on all sides by houses and an office block. There is a gated entrance on East Palmer Street with a small gate on the corner of East Palmer and Memphis Streets. Another gated entrance can be found on East Montgomery Avenue. In a tree-laden park setting, the Fishtown Graveyard is named in dedication after its founder, Anthony Palmer. The oldest grave dates back to the 1700s, though most have eroded with time. Anthony Palmer died before the cemetery was founded, and so is buried at Christchurch Burial Ground in an unknown plot. There is quite a strange story of a visitor to the graveyard. Having the feeling of being watched, they placed the flowers on the grave they had gone to visit, and sensing that someone was behind them, turned around to find no one was there. When they looked back at the grave, the flowers were gone. There was also a suicide, as a young boy hung himself from a tree close to the cemetery's entrance. The branch which he used was later cut down, but people still claim to see his silhouette hanging from that branch. And lastly, we go to Laurel Hill Cemetery that opened in 1836. That's gone on to become recognised as a national landmark that is still a working cemetery. And of course it is haunted, with regular paranormal investigations taking place. With educational tours on offer, the gravestones sit in a parkland setting with a very grand pillared entrance on Ridge Avenue. There are said to be many paranormal hotspots at the site, with EVPs and the usual orbs being got. And that ends another message on the wall and haunted cemeteries. Listen out for more haunted cemeteries coming soon. You have been listening to Message on the Wall, brought to you in association with Paranormal Parodies. You can find Paranormal Parodies at paranormal-parodies.com.